I'm going to take a podcast of predictions for the next year. And out of the 10, there were a couple that stood out to me. And I wanted to build a presentation about those two, giving reference to the podcast itself. And this was a Moonshot podcast, very optimistic about what the future holds in store. But these experts from around the world gave their 2 cents. And I'll link to this in the description. What I did with the podcast is to take the URL and put it into a notebook in NotebookLM from Google. So in looking at it, it gives me the information about the podcast. The entire transcript is put into the notebook, and I can query what its point of view was, elements, and reflect back to the original source. But what I can also do is to use that podcast, that whole notebook, as a source to be included in something generated by Gemini. So you can imagine now any information source like a book you've written, articles, podcasts, videos, can now be put into notebooks, and those notebooks can be now made part of your domain of expertise inside the Gemini LLM. And so I asked for a bunch of slides about 2 points. One point had to do with you're going to be on a Zoom call, and some of the participants will be bots. It won't all be humans. And the other point was that higher education, which has been built around assessments, tests to see if you learn something, and then build a resume built based on what you say you've learned, whereas now we can have you build artifacts and build portfolios that show people your capabilities, and that going forward will change higher education. I had the system take a couple of shots at building slides that would fit the CueCam sort of structure. And I saved those images, and I'll just walk through them to give an idea. I'm not even creating a presentation. I'm just walking through the images that were created for me and addressing the talking points that were suggested. It is forecast where we're going to decide, is this person on my Zoom call real? At some point you can try it out. And it was suggested that you're going to have some bots in a call. And I don't think I agree with this. I don't see those bots participating. I see each employee as having bots that feed into their presentation. In other words, I see them using CueCam to bring bots forward as avatars and presenting what they found, but under the control of each participant. I think it's healthier for the humans to control their own bots and to be responsible in a Zoom meeting. I don't know how Zoom is going to organize around this, but I suspect it's more valuable for the team to have that structure in place. The next big issue is a bifurcation of education, that we credential people based on testing. And you have standards, but those standards are changing dramatically, and we don't even know what we're shooting at. When we say, you're good at this, now you should be ready for this kind of a job or this kind of career. Instead, the forecast is to provide a capability in a school environment to be able to perform and to be able to be participants in something that's bigger than yourself. It's a shift that will take time to be instantiated, but has very meaningful ramifications. And this leads to the death of the resume. Now you're going to have a performative experience where you're able to see what I've done. This is what I learned from that. This is how I can help with those experiences under my belt. And that means students will be publishing. I don't think there's any way to stop this. And it's a great thing to be able to have publishing and ungated knowledge available for students from around the world in order to leverage what they can and to be able to bring value to it in their learning experience. So students are going to be judged on what they build, not just by what they learned. So I want to thank Peter Diamandis for having that group pulled together. They have these Moonshots podcasts regularly, and I find them interesting, but I thought this one at the end of the year was particularly interesting to me by bringing them into this toolkit of NotebookLM into Gemini and then into CueCam. My participation in this learning is enhanced.